You have the tools available that you need for accomplishing the operation. Always disconnect the electrical supply before beginning any maintenance procedure. First thing you want to do is go underneath the control box assembly and loosen the U-bolts that are connecting the pipe that is connected to the flow switch. This will allow you to move the piping around when you are unscrewing the flow switch. Next, you want to remove the 6 screws from the top of the flow switch cover. Once the cover is removed, you note there's 2 wires inside. They're both red. They're connected to the normally open and the common terminal at the top. After you've disconnected the wires, remove the conduit nut. Slide it up the conduit and carefully pull the conduit from the conduit fitting. If the conduit is too stiff, try heating it with a heat gun or a hair dryer to soften a little bit, make it easier to pull out of the conduit fitting. Be careful, because if you pull this too hard, you'll pop the conduit fitting out of the control panel box, and you'll have to pop the control panel and put that fitting back together when you're done. Once you got the conduit free, remove the 2 wires. The wires are offset so that they'll pull out of the conduit fitting very easily. Remove the 90-degree conduit fitting from the old flow switch. Save that O-ring if you can. Next, you want to undo the union where the plumbing enters the coil. Now you can rotate your flow switch assembly a little bit and unscrew it from the existing piping. Next thing you want to do is take a pipe wrench, take that nipple, elbow, and union fitting out of the old flow switch by rotating counterclockwise. Clean up your fittings, remove all the old Teflon tape. You want to retape those fittings. Leave a half a thread showing so you don't get Teflon tape into your system. And you want to make sure you got 2 wraps on there, no more than 3. You can put too much Teflon tape on a fitting. You also want to retape the nipple, elbow, and union fitting side of the assembly also at this time. You don't want to use liquid pipes thread sealants in this operation. When reinstalling the plumbing, note the flow direction and the casting on the bottom of the flow switch. The nipple, elbow, and union fitting go with the direction of flow. Tighten that fitting in and then screw the flow switch assembly back onto the existing piping. You may have to use a wrench for this. If you Teflon taped it correctly, hand tight, good and hand tight should do it. Your union halves will line up now, and you want to reconnect your union. Take your adjustable wrenches, snug your union up. Place the O-ring onto the conduit fitting. Put a little silicone adhesive in the threads. This will just ensure that it stays watertight. Screw the conduit fitting back into the flow switch. Careful not to cross the threads. You're going to start placing the wires into the conduit fitting. And right about now, you remember you forgot to put the conduit nut onto the conduit. Slide that conduit nut out of the way. Feed the wires back in through the conduit fitting. When placing the conduit into the conduit fitting, you'll feel it go down. Make sure that it's seated all the way down in the conduit fitting. Replace the conduit nut hand tight. Now we're going to reattach the wires on the flow switch. Both the wires are red. It doesn't matter which wire goes to which terminal. You'll notice inside there is a switch mechanism. One screw is blacked out. The screw in the center, the normally open terminal, will be used, and the common terminal at the top of the switch assembly will be used. Don't mess with any of the adjustments inside of your new flow switch. They're factory set and cannot be adjusted. Simply replace the two terminals. Make sure they're good and snug. Bend your wires out of the way so you don't pinch them when you're replacing the cap. Make sure the O-ring is in place in the body of the flow switch. Replace the cap and the 6 machine screws. Snug them all down evenly. Remember to check for leaks and test the function of the flow switch before putting the machine back into service.